Well, hello everybody. Let me turn this down. Holy crap. Today is World Bipolar Day, and I know what you're thinking, right? Well, you said you were going to bring YouTubers on, and you said that you were going to, you know, you said you were going to bring YouTubers on and all that. There is one particular YouTuber that I want you to go check out that has bipolar type 2. Her name is Sophie Murray. And I know that I don't have many followers. There's also somebody named Jess, that's also a girl living with bipolar 1. So you could probably just type in the search results Jess, bipolar 1 or whatever, and she's actually a very courageous woman dealing with bipolar 1 disorder. And Sophie Murray obviously struggles with very bad major depressive episodes and bipolar 2. So I want you to go check both of them out. But I cannot, unfortunately, show videos, and the reason why is because they echo on my speaker. So, yeah, I took my Mensa admissions test today, but we're not going to talk about that today. So, we're going to talk about my complete history with bipolar disorder as part of World Bipolar Day. And this is hopefully if my computer doesn't crash, right? I also want you guys to check out Polar Warriors. That is a guy that is battling bipolar 1 disorder that is very severely affected. All right, now let's begin, right? So I would say that it really all started beginning when I started to date online on Roblox. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's like, how does this have anything to do with bipolar disorder? Well, we'll get into that, right? So, essentially what would happen is I would go and I would date people on Roblox, and I'd become very dependent on them. I'd become very dependent on them. Like, I would, I wanted them to always be online, and I wanted to sexually interact with them. Keep in mind, I was a very young teenager on Roblox at the time, right? And eventually what would happen is I would develop some dependency problems and some depression as a result of that. Of things not working out with these people that I didn't know online, right? I mean, online dating is dumb now I look at it, but at the time, I was a kid. So I think that's really what's first led me into bipolar disorder, was because, remember, bipolar disorder can be due to environmental factors. My mother has a mood disorder, but we don't know what it is. She's been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, but she also has an irritable moods occasionally. I would say like an unspecified mood disorder along with major depressive disorder. So there's that. So a mood disturbance kind of disorder, not necessarily bipolar 1 or 2. Now, during dating on Roblox and during a lot of my friendships online, a lot of them ended or didn't go well, and I really started developing my first bouts of depression. And it got even worse in 2020. Okay, so what happened? Well, my dad basically had stresses at his job. We were living in Oklahoma at the time. I'm in Oklahoma now, but I'll explain. We're in Oklahoma, right? This is where I know everything. I grew up in Oklahoma my whole life, right? So all the restaurants in one town, all the restaurants, all my friends, my school, everything I know was in Oklahoma. And then we moved to Virginia near Washington, D.C. during COVID. And the schools were on virtual for half a year, right? So I had no social interaction whatsoever for half a year, and I moved to a totally new place in which I had no idea what it was like. So it was very depressing, I would say, and very stressful for me. right? And I had just broken up with my ex on Roblox. It was not, you know, it was not Aries. And don't get mad, because nobody knows you except the people that nobody actually knows your username. So won't worry. It was about Crystal. When I broke up with her, it was, I believe, just early January, and that's when I had very major depression. But it got a lot worse when I moved to Virginia and didn't know anybody there and didn't see anybody there. And um, I would say that the very first mood episode that I had was possibly in seventh grade, when I was disrupting the teacher and trying to get cool friends and moving a lot in my seat despite being on ADHD meds. But I would say that real bipolar disorder started happening when I moved to Virginia and when I broke up with my Roblox girlfriends, because I was young at the time and very dependent on them, and it really led to mental health issues. I was kind of a social loner at school. And so, yeah, those are all risk factors for developing a mood disorder. And so I moved to Virginia, very, very, like, locked down for half a year, and I really started to get extremely depressed. Like, just very, I wouldn't know if I'd call it major depression quite yet, but basically border so. It could be major depression. It really could be. I was coming home from school. I would not pay attention the whole day in class. I wouldn't really want to eat anything. I just kind of went up into my room. It was really during winter breaks and breaks in general where I get very depressed. And so, yeah, I went up into my room, and I just basically, um, I would just stay in there, and I would just stay in there, and like, I lost a lot of weight, um, all sorts of stuff like that. I look, I want to call it a major depressive episode, but I don't know if that's that level of severity. It might be. It was a persistent, long depression, um, and it was generally disruptive to my life in the winter months, and it would cycle, right? So it would last a couple weeks where I had heavy thoughts of suicide and was depressed, didn't want to do anything. I felt tired a lot of the time. I had lack of concentration and rumination. So yeah, I guess I did have major depressive episodes at the time. So I get back, and I was on this server during the whole Virginia thing, and even back in Oklahoma, called Classical Thinkers, right? And as time progresses, my friends on there that I used to know, I wouldn't say they turned against me, but I lost connection with them because I had some bad political views at the time and said some things that I shouldn't have. Like, I remember this one time where I don't even want to talk about it. But basically, I was young and stupid, and I feel like I lost a lot of friends on my social outlet that I was relying on at the time due to lockdowns, because I had such bad takes, and because I was kind of annoying, you know? And that really boosted my depression even more. And this is where I think the bipolar side started developing, right? So we got that depression, that cycles of depression, right? So not really bipolarity. Maybe the seventh grade event was a little bit of bipolarity. But then starts coming my algebra, my classes. I'm in school again, right, in Virginia. I'm still in classical thinkers. I'm very depressed. I'm always venting. It's always a problem. Like, I just hate it. And so I'm in class. I'm in honors classes in Virginia. Um, and I had a bad Algebra 2 teacher. The whole class was flunking the course. Or I'm sorry, yeah, the whole class was flunking the course. And I knew that it would impact my college chances and my classes a lot if I got a bad grade in this class. So I had tremendous stress, absolutely tremendous stress. And I would just cry, and I would break down, and I would have panic attacks, all this stuff. I would constantly think about this, my math class grades. For reference, I'm in Calc 2 now, and I got a borderline B, right? So I'm doing quite well now. But I would just, and my dad turns to me after, I would say, a year and a half of being in Virginia. This was junior year, second semester. This was during the winter, actually. And he just turned to me and he said, "Do you want to move back to Oklahoma?" And I said, "Yes, I want to move back to Oklahoma. I want to see all my friends again. I want to be able to see the old people that I knew and go back to my troop and everything like that. Get to see my grandmother, right? My grandmother is mean and nasty, but I just wanted to see people that I knew again. And so he was like, all right, and he sacrificed $10,000 for me to move back to Virginia. I'm sorry, Oklahoma. He sacrificed $10,000 so that I could move to Oklahoma because he loves me and he cares for me, my father. So my father has a lease in Virginia because he's renting, right? Because his job in Virginia, remember, he got a job in Virginia, and so we had to move to Virginia. Oh, somebody is contacting me. So we thought, the job was a temporary job, so we rented, right? We rented this townhouse in Virginia when we moved from Oklahoma to Virginia because my dad got a new job. And he had to stay his lease, he leased for a year, and so he had to keep his promise on the lease, basically. And so I moved back with my grandmother to Oklahoma in the same school district that I was before. And my mental health is a little bit better, but it's still very depressive during this time. And so one day, because I'm getting into arguments with classical thinkers and everything like this, right? So I'm in class. So my life is very stressful, right? I just moved back to Oklahoma. My social outlet online in classical thinkers is kind of ruined. It's a mess. I was probably pretty hypersexual at the time and tried to go after a lot of people online and tried to, consensually. It was all consensual. I never harassed anybody, right? Everything like that. Things that a normal teenager boy does, right? So I'm in Oklahoma, right? And I like this femboy in my class. As funny as that sounds, right? And so basically, I vent to him about my life and what's going on and everything like that. And here's what happened, okay? So basically, I get his Discord contact, right? And then I basically say to him, hey, I know you're not going to like me. I just want to vent about my life and blah, 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 right? And his friend gets on there the next day or something and says, you're pressuring him to date you and saying you're going to kill yourself if he doesn't date you, which was not my intention at all. It might have sounded like that, but that was not really my intention. I just wanted somebody that I could talk to that was in real life. That wasn't my dad, right? Somebody my own age that I could talk to. I was in Boy Scouts at the time, but, I wanted somebody in school that I could talk to about my problems. I had some Boy Scout friends that were a few years younger than me at this point. We're still friends today, like on a message group. And they weren't mature enough to deal with my problems, right? They would kind of just shrug it off. And that's fine, right? They don't have the emotional capacity to deal with problems when they're young. They just kind of say, and that's not them being an asshole. They just can't deal with it because they're young, right? They're like 2-3 years younger than me. And we're still friends to this day via message. So his friend comes on, the femboy's friend, he's my same age as me, and basically says, if you don't stop this, we're going to take care of it. And I just got completely paranoid. Like, I would go into class, and the whole time, I had psychomotor agitation, extreme paranoia. For some reason, I had very big grandiosity. I would exercise more to try to get rid of these thoughts, these racing thoughts. I wouldn't speak much, which is not usual for mania, but this was a real telltale sign of something that wasn't depression anymore, right? I was very scared. I was very manic. I brought this guy out of the classroom, and I just randomly talked to him and said, I know that you're spreading things to this femboy about me, and I know that you're doing this. Oh my God, I was like a mess, a complete mess. And nobody really thought anything was wrong with me because I wasn't talkative, right? I wasn't really talkative. But they knew something was wrong with me because I just talked to this random kid, and I would bring these random things up and act passively aggressive. It wasn't a personality disorder. It was just my response to this threat that I got, and I was absolutely fucking out of it. Right, I kind of lost contact with reality. It wasn't delusions or hallucinate. It was probably delusions, actually. And there was disorganized thinking. No hallucinations, right? And this lasted, I would say, just a bit short of a week. But, for a bipolar I diagnosis, maybe if it doesn't last a full week, but it lasts very close to a full week, you can basically just call it a manic episode because that's really what it is. So, yeah, it was a manic episode, I would say, or just very short of a manic episode. So, I get home one night, and all of a sudden, in my head, I think this is spring, like February, around February time. And all of a sudden, I get this idea in my head. What if I have bipolar disorder? Now, keep in mind, I didn't even know the types of bipolar disorder. I didn't even know really what the illness is. But I just knew that I had this elevated mood and this depression that kind of occurred, right? And I want to quit side note here. I showed signs of hypomania on Boy Scout campouts when I was in Oklahoma, when I was a bit younger. When I was introduced to a new environment, I'd laugh a lot, and I do impulsive things. And actually, some of it can be described, I guess, due to ADHD, but I wouldn't really say that's an excuse because I don't know. I think it went too far for ADHD. For example, I don't think most kids are on their ADHD meds during the weekends. And when I wasn't on other weekends, that's not how I would act, right? Around the house, for example, when there wasn't a camp out, I wouldn't act in an elevated mood state. So I'd laugh hysterically, I'd do impulsive things, On the campouts, I would talk really fast. I'd have all of this energy, all of this, right? It wasn't mania, but it was hypomania. And it could last, 2-3 days, depending on the campout's length. And while they don't meet the full criteria for a hypomanic episode, it really tells you something, right? So I had my first manic episode. I wouldn't even really classify it as a manic episode, but definitely a bipolar mood disturbance in school after this threat came in. And I talked to my grandmother because I was living with my grandmother at the time. And she was like, yeah, we'll get you to a psychologist. So my dad doesn't think I have bipolar disorder because he's never seen the manic side of me, right? On the campouts, for example, he just thinks, oh, it's very positive. He's being a kid. And that's what people that have hypomania, that's what they look like. Oh, he's just, he's having a good time. But it was definitely hypomania. And it's not his fault for not identifying it. But anyways, he seeks a psychologist out, right? This is springtime now, right? And meanwhile, I'm learning about bipolar disorder, right, in my room during the springtime, and I'm going to get an evaluation. This is around the time where I stopped being in classical thinkers. I just quit it because everyone laughed at me, and I was basically a joke in that server. There were some people that really stuck for me until the end, like Imperial Guardsmen and Underestimated. Those people really cared for me. This is until I realized that online friends are all basically bullshit, and just hang out with them like every once in a blue moon because it doesn't really matter. Who fuck cares? Right? Go make friends in real life. Like, I stopped playing with my online friends, basically all of them. The only thing I do is contact my real life friends at this point, because it's just not worth it, it's not worth all the time. So, I quit classical thinkers, and I go, and I get evaluated by a psychologist. I took a depression screener. It was, I don't remember what it was. I want to say it started with the letter B, but I'm not for sure. It was not the PHQ-9 screening. It wasn't. It wasn't PHQ-9 or the ICD-10, major depressive inventory. It wasn't those two. It was a Beck's depression assessment or something like that. I think it was called Beck's. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, I'll list all the things that I'm going through. Because at this point, I have severe depression after, and I track my mood during these times. And I notice it's going from 10 to 2, out of 1 out of 10, 10 to 2, and it'll be 2 for a week or so, or 3 for a week, and then it'll go up to 7, 8, 9 for 4 days or whatever. I was rapid cycling like a crazy motherfucker, right? And so the Beck Depression Inventory comes back. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get mild to moderate depression, I was answering honestly. And she said, Trip, your score is a 38. And this is out of I think like 60 points. A 38 indicates severe, almost. It was based on how I was feeling at the time of the evaluation. A 38 means severe depression, almost extreme depression. And I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know all the symptoms that I had equated to severe depression. I thought it was just something I needed to suck up. I mean, I got through my school days. How bad could it be? But it was severe depression. And it lasted for, I would say, around 2 weeks. Or so. Maybe a bit less. So then she has me do another test later. And And this test marked like 9 different things, right? 9 different categories. And I scored high in almost all of them except mania. Now you might be asking, you can't possibly have bipolar if you didn't score high in mania category. Well, first of all, I was depressed during the time of the assessment, but also the only thing that the mania basically measures is 2 things: psychomotor agitation and grandiosity, right? And if you're not feeling grandiose at the time, you're gonna put, no, I feel like the worst person ever. I feel like a piece of shit. I feel like shit right now, right? So I scored very low on that. I scored somewhat high on psychomotor agitation, somewhat high, not clinically significant though. So, but I scored high in the schizophrenia values and the depression values and the paranoia values, all high. So the final time that I went to the psychologist's office, I was diagnosed probably wrongly. I probably should have been diagnosed with bipolar specified or unspecified, because I don't know if the mania lasted a full week, with bipolar I disorder. And we'll verify that later, like how that came to be. And so my dad kind of can't believe it, and he's just trying. I know that he's trying to make up excuses. Well, all the kids would act like this on the camp out, and this and this and this, and I was depressed at the time and angry, and I was having a mixed episode, and so the ICD-10 came out to be mixed moderate bipolar disorder, right? Because I was in a mixed episode at the time, and I was angry at my father because, and rightfully so, right? I mean, it's not neglectful to say, oh, he doesn't have it. He was more just explaining to the psychologist why he didn't think I had it and I had a different disorder, which is fine, right? The goal is to try to get me help. And if he thinks I don't have bipolar, but I have something else that requires different treatment, then that's totally fine. At the end of the day, everyone's trying to help me, right? So if he doesn't believe I have bipolar disorder and he expresses it to the psychologist, that's fine. That's not neglectful or anything. But anyways, it's done. I got bipolar I diagnosis. So I came on here and discussed it. This was a while ago. Since then, I've had a couple major depressive episodes. In September of, I believe it was 2022. Yeah, it would have been 2022. I had a manic episode that lasted 7 days and caused impairment in my school work, like my school. They almost called cops on me, and yeah, they almost called the cops on me. I had a couple hypomanic episodes and manic episodes during my school, or at least one manic episode and a couple hypomanic episodes during my time at school, and I had a major depressive episode in the spring. It lasted basically 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. So yeah, it was a major depressive episode, and it was absolutely terrible. It affected my life horribly. I wouldn't eat. And some days I wouldn't sleep, although it wasn't the majority of days. I had decreased concentration. I felt worthless. Like, not the type of worthless, like, oh, I feel worthless, but just like, I'm nothing. I'm absolutely nothing. Right? Nothing's ever going to come from me. Right? That kind of worthlessness. I didn't have thoughts of death or suicide, and the reason why is I was medicated at the time, and for some reason I just never had thoughts of death or suicide, but it was serious depression regardless, right? I couldn't really take care of myself, depressed mood, anhedonia, all that, and it met. I checked the DSM-5 criteria, and it definitely met the criteria for a major depressive episode. So since my diagnosis, before going to college, I had one manic episode, a couple hypomanic episodes, and a major depressive episode. So the summer comes around, I believe, I'm trying to think what summer this would be. It would have been this summer. The summer comes around, and I'm depressed at a point. I have hypomania, that you guys saw. I think it was this summer. I had hypomania. Was it? I'm talking about my junior year. My senior year. My senior year is when I had depression and mania and a couple hypomanic episodes. And then the summer, you guys saw that I had a hypomanic episode. It was not manic. You guys may have said, oh, you had a hallucination. I don't think I did. It was a hypomanic episode that you guys saw. I had a mixed episode that lasted a couple, 2-3 days. And then I go into college. And this is where the bipolar I disorder, it is bipolar I, definitely. And I have anger issues, I'm breaking stuff. Well, I'm not breaking stuff, but I'm tossing stuff around my dorm and all that shit. And the police get called on me 3 times, but they're not manic episodes, they're just more panic attacks and anger issues. And I think it's because of lowered inhibitions, like higher impulsivity as the bipolar disorder progresses in the brain, causes damage to impulse control. So, in college, basically, I had a manic episode in December before finals. The workload was insane. I lost 20 pounds. I probably had an eating disorder at the time. I had problems with sleep medication, all sorts of shit. I don't want to go over it. You guys can watch my college summary. That college was a piece of shit. So basically, I had a manic episode, and it landed me in the hospital, and I met all the criteria from the DSM-5. You know, before I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm bipolar I. I know I'm on the bipolar spectrum, but I think I was kind of wrongly diagnosed. But this time, I knew that it met the criteria for a manic episode. So, yeah, I met the criteria for a manic episode, and I was at the hospital. And then I got some depression afterwards, and, you know, I documented all that, and that's where we are today. That's my full bipolar disorder story so far. You guys saw this from when I was a teen growing up to now. That's all the history that I have of this disorder. In all, probably 1 or 2 major depressive episodes, quite a few hypomanic episodes, and I would say 2 manic episodes, but at least 1 that's confirmed. Maybe 3 at most if we count the one about the femboy. But I would say 1 to 2. I don't know if that met the criteria. So, yeah. There you go. Now, despite this disorder, I am in college doing data science. I have good grades. I'm not depressed or manic, and I haven't been for a long time. Like, probably 3 months since my manic episode. I haven't engaged in drugs or alcohol, and I have a strong support system, so I'm doing very good. Anyways, thank you for joining me on my story on this World Bipolar Day. Have a good day. Bye.